I served from June 1944 upon my high school graduation until August 1946. I'm 86 years old, and among only a handful of those still alive who served with me on the US or Riley D-330. I began as an apprenticed seaman, and ended as a petty officer second class, working as a sonar operator. Our experiences during the war took us into the Atlantic and Pacific. Brooklyn Naval Yard served as our home base during our time spent in the Atlantic. We made many trips back and forth escorting convoys between England, Wales, and Scotland, and others before I was aboard. These convoys carried munitions, supplies, and troops. We also were patrolling for German submarines, and are under the impression, never confirmed, that we sunk 2 of them, and never lost a ship in any convoy we escorted. We experienced many terrible storms, including a storm where we tilted 64 degrees, our destroyer only capable of withstanding 70 degrees. Following the day, we went through the Panama Canal into the Pacific. We stopped in Hawaii, along with numerous Pacific islands. We escorted the US Indianapolis, which carried the trigger systems for the atomic bombs dropped over Japan, which we were unaware of until afterwards. We headed to the Philippines, and then were called back, because the Indianapolis was sunk, after it has made its deliveries. We searched for survivors and found none. We were between the Tinian Islands, Guam, and the Philippines, when we heard news about the atomic bombs and the following Japanese surrender. Prior to this, we witnessed thousands of ships as far as the eye could see preparing for a Japanese invasion, which we were all under the impression was imminent. After the war, we stopped in Shanghai and then Formosa, Taiwan, and had some interesting experiences in both of those places, before returning back to the US. About how often did you see combat? In the Atlantic, every convoy we escorted was under danger of attack. We had direct contact with several German submarines, and as I mentioned before, we are under the assumption that we sunk them, as they never attacked. Sometimes the Germans would put fake blood and debris into the water to make it appear as they had been sunk when really hadn't been. Not sure about today, but back then there was really no way to be certain if the submarine fired upon had been actually sunk or not. We used depth charges and hedgehogs, explosive devices shot up in an arc, which would come down in a circular pattern targeting the submarine. The submarines never attacked us, we hit them first. How did you and other military members feel about the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Did you feel they were justified or not? Were you just relieved to know you didn't have to invade? How did the rest of America feel right after they were dropped? We were overjoyed the bombs ended the war. My fellow sailors and I felt, whether it was in terms of right or wrong, it not only saved our lives, but it saved many thousands of lives of US military personnel. I do not believe there was much discussion as to right or wrong at the time. A Japanese invasion would have been immensely costly for all countries involved. The entire nation was relieved and overjoyed that the war was now completely over. After the war, we stopped in Shanghai and then Formosa, Taiwan, and had some interesting experiences in both of those places before returning back to the US. Could you share a few of those stories? In Shanghai, we had just docked and were getting off the ship and into the whaler boat when this Chinese lady grabbed me and pulled me onto her sampan, a small flat-bottomed Chinese boat. The assumption is that she was going to take me somewhere up the river away from the ship where foul play would ensue, perhaps robbery and/or murder. My friends helped me and got me away from her, back onto the whaler boat. In Formosa, Taiwan, we were allowed on shore to take some time off and play a baseball game. Rather than play baseball, a fellow sailor and I went off on our own to collect souvenirs, unbeknownst to everyone else as it was against the rules. We found what we thought was an abandoned building where we saw Chinese coolie, manual laborers from Asia, hats. Since we thought the building was empty, we decided to take these hats for ourselves, and as we were reaching for them, a Japanese military officer of full regalia, including sword, stepped out the door and bowed to both of us. We were aghast. We may have bowed a little bit, or may have said hi, I really can't remember. We had no idea if he was aware that the war had ended, as it had within a week of us being there. We asked if he had any coins, in English, and all he did was bow and smile. We thanked him, even though he probably had no idea what we're saying, and we walked away, and as soon as we were out of sight ran full speed back to the ship. He looked just like the American propaganda posters for the Japanese we had seen back home. Big toothy grin, and just his whole face in general. I did manage to get some good souvenirs though, a rubber rod and glass rod which I would later use teaching my science classes at Riverside Community College, and a book with some Chinese writing on it, as well as a set of brass gram weights inscribed with Chinese writing. All of this was found in the rubble of a bombed out schoolhouse. Thank you for your service. I heard from a WWII Navy vet that they used to make a special cocktail using torpedo fuel. I'm assuming this was just a story. Can you confirm any part of this tale? I can confirm that I've heard about this, but we were warned that such a cocktail might contain methyl alcohol, which could cause you to go blind. I heard rumors that this was tried by some sailors, one of whom may have been on the US O'Reilly before I was on board, but am not aware of any particulars of this. How much did you associate with those who served alongside you after returning home? I lost contact with most of my buddies a few years after discharge. I regained contact with several of my sonar buddies many years later at a reunion for the O'Reilly in 1998, and continued to maintain periodic contact. I have recently lost contact with those I knew, and suspect that they have passed away. Thank you for your service. My questions are as follow. 1. What did you do after the war? 2. Where can I purchase stuff directly from veterans of WW2? 3. Do you think we made the right decision to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Obviously a land invasion would have resulted in the loss of numerous lives. 4. Do you have a photo of yourself now? Thank you once again. 1. I took advantage of the GI Bill and went to college, got a degree in science and math, and became a high school science teacher teaching biology, chemistry, and physics for 18 years. Then I took a job at Riverside Community College and taught physics and astronomy for 20 years and then retired. 2. I'm sorry but I don't know. 3. This is answered below. 4. Yes, there will be photos posted later. Sir, it is an honor to read this post. I'm a petty officer 3rd class sonar technician currently serving on DDG 51, the Arleigh Burke in Norfolk, Virginia. Thank you so much for laying the foundation you have so a sonar squid like myself has a standard to hold himself to. Can you tell me anything interesting about your sonar system? What was it called? It was just called sonar, which was the general term for the systems on all of the ships. No model type or anything like that. It was unique to destroyers and destroyer escorts. The sonar system involved a huge transmitter and receiver at the bottom of the ship, which could be raised and lowered at convenience. The transmitter had the ability to transmit the range and nautical bearing to the operator. It would send out an ultra-frequency sound wave which would strike a target and return to the transmitter. Knowing the time for sound to travel, we would know the exact distance of that target. The signal would be transmitted and converted to regular sound frequency and return our major instrument for sound detection for single transfer by echo. The echo was received by this instrument called the stack, which was able to determine the width of the object detected, so we could help identify it as a submarine. A whale could give similar dimensions, but a more erratic motion. Ships sometimes would drop charges on whales thinking they were submarines. The system also involved equipment called the recorder, which recorded vital information onto specialized paper. The system also included a device called the As Soon As Possible which displayed every blip of the returning echo, created by every movement the submarine would make. Sonar at this time was so top secret that we had our outgoing/incoming mail censored at all times. This technology was so important that it turned the tide against German submarine domination in the Atlantic, which resulted in almost their total destruction. The Germans were unaware of our capability at first, but later caught on by hearing the ping sound made on their subs. We were known as ping jockeys. What did you think of the war in Iraq and the future war in Iran? I personally believe the war in Iraq was ill-founded. Thousands of lives have been destroyed to find and destroy one man. All propaganda we heard about the arsenals and destructive abilities of Saddam Hussein have proven to be false, and they have never been able to justify this in a nearly decade-long war. As far as Iran is concerned, we should be careful to keep all options open, but steer away from involvement from what would likely be another catastrophic war. Were STDs very prevalent? They were always being checked for during routine medical checkups. They called these short-arm inspections, in which we always had to line up naked, and the doctor would go patient by patient. We were cautioned to always use condoms during sexual intercourse. They were issued free at every liberty the sailors had. I never knew of a case of any of my sailor mates to have had a disease. It probably was somewhat prevalent among certain parts of the military world. My great uncle served in WW2, regular Navy. He didn't tell me much of the bad, but did tell me some of the remarkable and good. He was technically too young to serve, but was not turned away when he signed up. He and one other from his company survived D-Day. His favorite recollection was being appointed burgomaster of some town afterwards, and the women of the town baked him a cake for his birthday. He always smiled when he told us that bit. I think of Uncle Frank every day. Bless you, sir, for your service. I'm in awe. Also thanks 25 years old for posting this. My question, how did you all make it through that storm, tilted like that? Did you all just hang on or run to the other side of the ship? Alternatively, what do you think about Shanghai, as it is now, and how you knew it, when you were there? On edit, re the souvenirs great uncle Frank brought home a Walther P38. He told me he had to smuggle it home to the States, i.e., they weren't supposed to do it, but he did it anyway. By smuggle, I mean, only that he put it in his duffel, and got on board the flight to bring him home. Did you have to smuggle the souvenirs that you obtained, or did anyone really question you on it? Thanks again. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, so I can make more videos.